Alright, peace and greetings, YouTube. So welcome to another edition of In the News. I'm trying something a little different with the audio. I keep getting a few comments every now and then where people are saying they can't hear what I'm saying, like it's not coming out clearly. And so I don't know if it's the devices that they're playing it on. I know my camera already kind of has a crappy microphone, but I also have really high ceilings. So I think it's a combination of all of that and the acoustics. And so maybe it's not coming out right. So I said, let's try something different. So y'all let me know in the comment section if this sounds better or not. Anyway, back to our topic at hand. So the first order of business, I don't know if you guys have seen this video. It's the video of the mom that gets pissed off at her son because he chose to play football for the college she didn't want him to go to. She was rooting for him to go to Alabama. He decided he wanted to go to Florida. And so when you see the clip, he's sitting at the table. They have the hats there. The media's there. ESPN's there. All his friends and fans and supporters are all in the back because I'm sure this is probably some kid that, people have been following since he was probably 11 or 12 when they discovered this kid's about to be something. And so what was supposed to be the happiest day of this kid's life, in addition to, a few years later when he'll get drafted to the NFL and he'll sign his contracts and stuff like that. But for the moment, what is supposed to be the happiest day of his life ends up kind of being like probably the most confusing and sad because he decides that he wants to go to Florida. And as much as his mom wants him to go to Alabama, he's kind of like, I just got to do with, I want to do me. I want to go where I think I'm going to be happy. And so the mom, she get her back. She did that Viola Davis skit where Viola put that purse on and walked right out. She walked right out, right in front of the camera, in front of everybody. And so the sad part is, as he's trying to answer these questions with the interview, he starts crying because in my head, I feel like he's disappointed, but he also feels like he doesn't want to disappoint his mother because there's nothing like, mothers and their sons have unique relationships. There's nothing like a bond between a mother and her son. And so, I feel like he didn't want to disappoint her, but he just felt like she didn't understand. I don't know. And the worst part is, the media is so shady. They're, well, and who's that person that just walked out? You know exactly who that is. If I was him, I'd be like, it's my girlfriend, all right? Like, I would have had them all confused with that. Like, man, that was jacked up. But my thing with this is, I'll say this. And I'm not a parent yet, and I don't have kids, but at this point, I don't work with them for like 7 years. Well, actually 9 if I count the other 2 years when I was at a different spot. Okay, and in that 9 years, I've seen a lot. I've been firsthand witness to the college arguments, and I've been there for the teenager that gets kicked out of the house because they think they too grown, and then they come back to the center and they thinking that they're going to stay with me, and I'm like, absolutely not. I was planning on having company tonight. You ain't coming to my house. And so let's get in this car. I'm going to drive you back to your mama's house, and I'm going to have to sit in this living room with your mama at 11:30 p.m., and I got to hear about all the terrible things that you've done and why you get on her nerves. And somehow, by the time I leave and go to my car, you're going to be staying at your house with your mom. Like, I've been through all of that. So I can say this. When it comes to things like college and dreams, I think sometimes parents, they have to let their teenagers make those decisions and become young adults. And even if you don't agree, sometimes you guys got to let your child make their own mistakes if you think what they're doing is a mistake. It's not always going to be about you all the time. And when I say that, please don't take offense. I'm just basing it on what I've witnessed. Like, I've seen so many relationships go sour because sometimes parents just don't even acknowledge or want to hear the opinions of what their older teenage children are saying. Because as parents, there's always, especially depending on how you were raised and when you were raised, there's always going to be that I'm the parent, you the child, shut the hell up and do what I say. Or you get popped in your eye. There's that mentality. And it's kind of like you got to remember at some point, this kid, he's thinking about his NFL dreams, I'm sure. And he also probably is thinking about, I'm looking at a college, I want to go somewhere where I'm going to fit in. I have to go somewhere. Because the thing about this, when you go off to college, the parents aren't going with you. Parents, y'all get to stay home. You foot in the bill, but unless there's a scholarship. But it's the child or the teenager that's going there, and this is going to be their life for the next 4 years or 5 years or 6 years if they go to grad school or if they're a super senior. We know it is what it is. And so it's like sometimes you got to step out and just let your child make that decision. And I hate that the mother made that moment about her because she ruined his moment. And so that everybody's going to always remember how she responded. And I know she loves him, and I know she wants him to be great, and she just wants him to be the best. But it's like sometimes you have to be careful with how you express that because sometimes when you're doing things for yourself, you start hurting other people. And so really, as I saw him cry, let me tell y'all a story. It took me back to my experience. Now, I wasn't no damn football player getting no, schools fighting over me, but at the time when I was coming out of high school, I knew for sure I was getting out of Washington State. I grew up in Spanaway, Washington, which is way out in the sticks, the suburbs of like Tacoma, Washington. I just knew I was getting out of Spanaway, Washington. I knew I was going to an HBCU. That's what I wanted to do. And so my top two choices were Howard and Morehouse. And so my parents at the time, they're like, what, you ain't going to Howard or Morehouse? You got all these good schools right here. This is where you're going to go to school. And so we had the whole college argument. And my thing was pretty much, listen, at this point, I was the student body president in high school. I did track. I was in, what else did I do? I was doing the whole dance, the little hip-hop dance thing. I did a little bit of the theater stuff. I did a bunch of everything. I felt like I had put in the work. I had like this really kick-ass GPA since 9th grade onward. And it was like, y'all knew I was planning on going to college. And so I feel like because I put in the work, I should at least be able to pick where I want to go. And I think that was a fair argument. Long story short, they were like, we ain't having it. So I had to secretly apply to go to school. Because their thing was, you need to go to University of Washington or you can go to Central. And Central was kind of like the extension of high school. Central was where everybody who kind of just half-stepped went, or where everybody went if they ain't gotten to the school of their choice. No diss to the people who go there. Just don't take it that way. That's just how I saw it as a 17-year-old at the time. And so, long story short, I had to secretly apply. The one black person who worked in my high school, the school nurse, she paid for both my applications with like the cashier's check or the certified check or whatever. She did all that. And I remember, and mind you, it was a process. HBCUs, and when they come to getting paperwork and stuff done, it's a hassle. They think you're missing something, and they missing calls, and it takes forever to hear back. But either way, I did my little after-school thing. I came home. My parents greet me with, what is this? And in their hand, 2 big old packets, one from Howard, one from Morehouse. My acceptance letters came from both schools on the same day. I was elated. It was like the best day ever. I was so happy, and my parents came to shut that down. Well, it don't matter because they thought I had also applied to University of Washington and Central. And I did apply to University of Washington. I didn't apply to Central, but University of Washington, I purposely didn't send in my transcript because I knew I was already going to Howard Morehouse. I already knew I was getting in. It was no ifs, ands, or buts. And I knew I was going to go to one of them. And so the other 2 weren't even on my radar. I was thinking like a 17-year-old, but I knew what I wanted. And so they're like, oh, it don't matter because, when that University of Washington one come, that's where you going because I'm the one writing the check. And I'm looking at them like, here y'all go. Y'all some hating ass motherfucker. And so then I turned into a real 17-year-old, started talking all that trash. And so I was like, you know what? I don't understand you people. You guys should be happy. First of all, Mom, you didn't get to go to college because there wasn't enough for you to go because you had 3 sisters and they all got to go. Then I was like, Dad, you didn't even get to finish high school, so you should be happy. I don't even know what you're talking. And so I gotta give you the visual. My dad at the time was he was built like Uncle Phil, maybe a little bit smaller. And just big, tall, just picks up people's and throws them. And so at the time that I said that, my dad was laying on the couch. I don't know how I can do this in this chair, but my dad, I got this chair right here. My dad is laying on the couch. And so when I said that, I'm like, you should just be happy. What? And trying to come here. I'm like, oh shit. And I ain't gonna talk about the rest of what happened, but just know it involved the shirt getting grabbed up and you lift up over the stair banister. The next time I tell, it was a hot mess. That was the craziest day. Now it's funny. That's supposed to be the day I done got into college. I done got cussed out by both parents. We ended up looking back and laughing at that later down the line. But with that mom, it's just ma'am, I know you're worried about your son. You want him to go there, but he's going to be great either way. If you've already taught him all the skills that you know, you've taught him how to be the man that you want him to be, he's going to go to wherever he goes, and he's going to be great. All right? And so, yes, I ended up going to Howard. I got my way. Oh, and then the worst part was because University of Washington had sent me a letter at some point during the application process and was Mr. I don't want to say my last name on here. Mr. So-and-so, application looks great, but we need your transcript. If we don't have it by this date, we're not going to be able to grant you admission. And so for some reason, I hid that somewhere in the room rather than just burning it and throwing it away. And so my parents found that letter my sophomore and junior year while I was at Howard. When I tell you they cussed me out, because they had just wrote that, I know they had just paid for something, so they were living. That's a hot mess. But anyway, let me move on. Donald Trump wants to have military parades, and I'm looking at him like he's crazy. Here's the thing, military parade, and I'm thinking he's thinking of it the same way the North Koreans are doing theirs with the tanks rolling and all the army. You know, because, you know, it's all about ego and pride for this man. But here's the thing. D.C. is small. As somebody who lives here, D.C. is not built for that kind of stuff. So when you're thinking of having big, giant tanks driving on tiny little D.C. roads, first of all, if you've been to D.C., now D.C. is a very important city. It's a great city. It's booming. I love it to death. But D.C., as far as the space, is not a big city. It's very small. Everything is kind of tight and congested. The roads are very narrow. All right? And so even I just see this. I see... First of all, I'm pissed off just thinking about the potholes I'm going to be hitting after the fact. Because you got them big old military tanks driving on these little D.C. roads. Them roads going to be so tore up and everything like that. The whole city going to be shut down. It's chaos. And then those of us who would still have to go to work and get on the freeway and drive into Virginia or drive into Maryland, wherever we work. Like, you messing it up for all of us. Trump, listen, sir, pause on the military parade. Like, we support the troops. You know, I feel bad that they constantly get shipped off to go fight for some nonsense that usually has nothing to do with our freedom. But I respect those who are willing to take a bullet for the liberties that I allegedly have in this country. So it's kind of like, listen, we can honor them, but let's find another way that's a little bit less expensive. So yeah, the D.C. parades aren't going to work. Like, I don't see them marching on Pennsylvania Ave. And then on top of that, them tanks are heavy, so I can already see the street collapsing and caving in and falling into the subway below and killing a bunch of people and everything. And then he's going to go and say it's Obama's fault for something that he did. And hot mess. So let that go. Now let me tell you what's really what got under my skin here. I don't know if y'all have seen this. They released what they believe is the image or the 3D replica of what they believe Queen Nefertiti or Nefertari, whatever you would like to call her, would have looked like. Now, if you don't know who she is, she was one of the wives of Ramses the Great. All right, and so she lived around. I think she died in 1255 BC. All right, and so this is Egypt. All right, now if you see the actual image, and I'm gonna upload it on here so you can see what I'm talking about as I'm explaining this. As if you can see what she looks like. They pretty much got Susan Sarandon and put, the hat on her head and threw her out there and put some pink chapstick and was like, boom, this is Queen Nefertari. Knock yourselves out. And so this is what gets me and what pisses me off about what people continue to do. People love to erase blackness out of greatness every single time. Now, there's a ton of people walking around here today who are convinced that when you look at the ancient Egyptians and everything, they're either convinced that those people are white or they have olive skin and they could pass as Greek. You know, that's the two kind of images you always get. So I have to debunk all that, and we have to go back and dig into how history actually operated. Now, at the time that Queen Nefertari was around, like I said, she died in 1255 BC. Everybody always thinks everybody who came out of Egypt looks Arab. Let's go back and understand something. The Great Arab Invasion did not take place until 679 AD. Almost 2,000 years after the pyramids had been built, after all of these great kingdoms and that entire... First of all, pause on kingdoms. I just want y'all to understand as well, I'm not one of those people who only gas up Egypt and act like the rest of the continent didn't have stuff going, because there were so many great empires, whether it was the Mali Empire, the Nubian Empire, so on and so on and so on. But back to my point. 2,000 years before the Arab migration came in. And if you don't know what the Arab migration is, it's just in 679, you had 4,000, Arab troops come in there, start taking over everything in Egypt, killing up everybody, shooting up everybody, and then more people started coming in, enslaved a bunch of people. And long story short, they pushed out the initial population of the people living in what we knew as Kemet, or you guys call it Egypt, what you know as Kemet. And over time, that entire demographic was either killed off, they were pushed off, or due to like rape and, a little bit of, reproducing here and there on occasion, the demographic of the people who currently occupy Egypt no longer look like the original residents. I hate to scare everybody, but the original residents that came from Egypt look just like I did. Okay, if you look at the statues of somebody like Ramses the Great, the big giant tombs and the statues that you see of him, he has the broad nose, he has the thicker lips. It's clearly a black man. And y'all not about to tell me black men were chasing after white women 2,000 years ago just like they are today. We're not doing that, okay? So, long story short, I don't know who that woman is that they tried to craft, but that ain't her. And the thing that makes me laugh even more is at the same time, there was a replica that was created and released talking about, what they believe the first inhabitants of Britain looked like. And so you look at that, and it's this black man with blue eyes. So I'm like, wait a minute. So there's a white woman who's the queen of Egypt over there, but at the same time, the first inhabitant over there in Britain is a dude that looks like Rob from Milli Vanilli. Like, yeah. So, yeah. So anyway, I believe the British guy is correct, but that Nefertari, that's wrong. I'm sorry, I don't know where they found that, and it's important that we be careful about that because they will constantly erase you out of your own history. Whenever you have completed and done something great, that's just how it is for black people, unfortunately, or anybody of African descent. Our history is always whitewashed and watered down, and we're always taken out of everything that we've ever created. All right, and what that does is it helps to further exploit and pretty much oppress us in that same realm, because you have to think about what's really going on. What is the only continent in the world right now that has enough resources to really keep the world going? Because the other continents are all running out. There's literally one continent that has everything that everybody needs. That continent is Africa, clearly. All right? And so by doing that, as long as you keep the people of Africa and the descendants of Africa inferior and out of the know about what it is that they've created, what it is that they have, and how great they are, and you keep them in an inferior mindset, it makes them complacent. It makes them not question anything. It makes us continue to put trust into people that we should not always put trust into. And it makes it easy for you to be exploited. So when you talk about the rush for Africa and the Berlin Conference of 1884, when they went in Africa and started dividing up all type of countries and snatching resources, it's pretty much a rehash that's really going on again today. When you talk about all the countries, especially like China, coming in there, snatching up all the gold. You got people from Europe and other parts of Asia coming back into the continent of Africa trying to take stuff. And on the home front here in the United States, when you talk about the fact that our history started to be erased, you got people trying to no longer teach about slavery and, oh, they were unpaid interns or they were servants. And what it does is it waters down the history. So then when you try to explain to people why there's a generational buildup or a residual effect or a residual buildup of wealth that has come from something like slavery, some people aren't even able to process that kind of conversation and don't understand what you're talking about because they don't think slavery was a big deal. I mean, they were fed. They had housing. They were happy. They came here and they were great. That's why I had to cook Ben Carson when he said that slaves were immigrants, or not slaves were immigrants, but everybody who came to the United States. He did say slaves were immigrants. That's why I made the video. I had to cook them. It's like when you start changing and altering the course of history, it takes away the power that people believe they have as far as how they feel with themselves and how they feel and recognize the greatness that they are. Like when you start taking away the origins of their history and you chunk away at it bit by bit, you pretty much create a brand of people who don't know who they are. And so it's important that people constantly read up on their history. People constantly challenge when something like that is thrown out. Because the way that was presented was, oh, scientists have uncovered. And because they use the word scientists, we're just supposed to automatically believe it. That's why I'm always like, just because something is presented to you, go back and do your own fact checking, because everything isn't always verbatim just because somebody told it to you. Just like if you don't believe what I'm saying, go look that mess up just to feel better about yourself. You know what I mean? And so they tried it. They better stop Susan Sarandon. Queen Nefertari, boy. Alright, so yeah, that's my 2 cents on the whole Queen Nefertari. I don't know what they were doing with that, but that clearly wasn't her. And it goes again, like when you're looking at the phenotypes, and when I say phenotypes, I'm just talking about facial structure and everything of how people had looked back then. I'm like, it's not a white woman. It doesn't make sense that they continue to do that, alright? Plus, she would have been sunburned as I don't know what if that was a white woman walking around in that area at the time. Because believe it or not, even though it was more of a lush land, the climate was still extremely hot. As a matter of fact, temperature was actually 2 or 3 degrees hotter then, I'm talking about the 2,000 years ago, than it was now. But anyway, moving on. Last thing. So, I don't know if you guys have seen this, but there's a petition going around, and there's a young man who created a petition where he's pretty much stating that, to the creators and the producers and the execs that are over the Black Panther movie project that, because, this is a film and it's being marketed to black people, you got a black cast, it's Black History Month, why don't we do some stuff to also help the black community? So why don't you guys also, create a space where 25% of all the revenue coming from the film goes back to the black community? And, it can go into like STEM projects or STEM, services and stuff like that can help and create opportunities for additional people later down the line. And I'll say this. I love that this guy is solution driven. He sees that there's a problem in his community. He wants to fix it. I love that he's action driven. He went and he tried to get some buzz. He tried to get, people to support him. But here's the thing. His heart is in the right place, but the United States is a heartless country. Business is a heartless field, and the entertainment industry is heartless. And so unfortunately, It's not gonna happen. And I'm not trying to kill the dream, but it's the reality of what it is. You have to also remember that even though this is a film being marketed to black people and it has a black cast and black subject matter, I guess, the thing is this. It's still being put out by a white company. And that company, at the end of the day, their main objective is to make sure they make money for their company so they can continue to make films. Now, what I will say, if he wanted to make, I don't know, I'll say this. The good that can come out of this Black Panther film, if it's extremely successful, which I believe it will be, is that hopefully, and I'm saying hopefully because like I said, I'm just thinking with my good heart as well, but I forgot that this industry is heartless. Hopefully, this can continue to open doors for black people within the film industry. And I would look at it that way as an opportunity in that realm. I'm hoping that because there's been an influx of black films and television projects that have been very successful, that these execs will continue to start looking and giving opportunity to black content creators, especially in the director and the writer roles, because that's where it's really hard to get in. A lot of black screenwriters, so many doors are closed on their face because people don't want to hear about what they got to say. If it's not already telling, this is the narrative they want you to always tell if you're a black screenwriter. All right? Hood movie, sex and drugs, everybody gets shot. Your name was Darnell, your best friend was Tyrell. Tyrell gets shot when y'all playing on the basketball court when you were 6 because Tyrell's brother was a drug dealer, and the drug dealer, something went wrong, and then the gang came and did a drive-by, and then Tyrell's mama runs out there and cries in the street, and at the end of the movie she dies because she had breast cancer. So that's one narrative, or the other narrative is the drug action flick. You know, you pushing the coke, and you got so and so, and you got the machete and the machine gun. You got to go kill people. Those are the narratives we get. Or the slave narrative. You know, you dragged it on the ship, and this is gonna be a rags to riches story about how you were a slave on a plantation, but the nice white lady came and she taught you how to read, and eventually, even though you were still a slave because you died before 1865, you know, you were able to teach a few other slaves the Bible. You know, like, those are the narratives that you get. And so there's not a lot of opportunities for a lot of people who are writing. They don't believe that you can have black superheroes. They don't believe you can have black scientists, or they don't believe you can have, you know. And so I'm hoping that as something like Black Panther continues to follow along that trend of opening doors, that it can create a space where we can have more black cinematographers, more black this and that. And then I think also, and the burden is not really on the companies because they're not going to do it. It's on the people who've already been given that opportunity or put in a space where now they can bring somebody else in. So somebody like Ryan Coogler, who I actually really like a lot as the director, you know, especially his work with Michael B. Jordan. He continues to keep Michael B. Jordan doing these movies. But it's like, you know, as Michael has opened, or as Ryan has opened the door for somebody like Michael B. Jordan to have an even bigger career, because he's been doing this since he was a teenager. I'm hoping that, you know, as people like Ryan Coogler, Ava DuVernay, and all of them get these opportunities, they make sure that they continue to bring in additional people who are, you know, of African descent that are doing, you know, different work in film. You know, bring in more black people and stuff like that. And because you never know, that random person who's the PA on set, you know, the production assistant, that might be the next Steven Spielberg, or that might be the next Spike Lee, or that might be the next Angela Bassett. It could be anything. So I think this film specifically, hopefully, it's creating a dialect and giving more opportunities. And the good thing about this film is that it's actually getting a real release. Most of our black films that are coming out do not get a full release. Like, look at how they did Taraji P. Henson. That film, most films open in an average of 3,000 screens. All right, if you can get the right budgeting, the right marketing, and you open on a film, you know, an average of 3,000 screens, you can easily pull $20+ million your first week, which means you probably did a good week if you didn't, you know, spend a whole lot on your budget. But with a lot of black films, they never open in more than 3,000 theaters. It never happens. It's always less than. Taraji's last movie, The Proud Mary, and I think it opened in, I want to say 21 or 2,200 theaters. And the thing about it, that film opened at number 8 in the box office. However, when you look at its box office score, it actually was the 3rd highest grossing film per screen at all the theaters that it aired at. But because it wasn't open in enough screens, it wasn't able to bring in more money its first week. And so had they opened that film in 3,000 theaters like some of the other ones they did, it would have done better. And I think that's a lane that just happens with blacks in film, unfortunately. Black people, we don't get the luxury of, we don't get to experiment with film. Everything that we do has to be so dynamic, so over the top, so great, or the film company is just not going to invest in it. We don't get that luxury, unfortunately, because they still don't think that black people are a legitimate buying audience. And unfortunately, they continue to use us. So what I think is going to happen, unfortunately, with Black Panther is Black Panther is going to make Marvel Studios / Disney hundreds of millions of dollars. And all that money is going to go to funding a film that is not directed by a black director, that does not have a majority black cast or diverse cast, that does not have a lot of black producers. It's going to be, a film, that money's going to go and fund another film that black people won't even be invited to audition for. And Gabrielle Union has talked about that, where she says, your cute little black film makes all, we didn't think it was going to do much, but it made $100 million. Great, we're going to use this $100 million to go and fund another project that you're not going to be on. Have fun. Hollywood's so great. But with that guy who made the petition, I think his energy is in the right place. But I think the bigger picture is this. And this video is getting really long, and I apologize. But the bigger picture is this. Everything that has happened to the black community has happened on purpose, because that's the way this country is set up. There are hundreds upon hundreds upon hundreds of laws and clauses that have been put into place to constantly keep us in the position that we're in. And so unfortunately for us, we're always in a position where we're burdened to take care of our community on a macro scale, and other communities don't have to do that. And so I think what we should do in situations like that is everybody does their part within the realm that they work. So somebody like Ryan Coogler, or the people who are doing like the film like Black Panther, your lane is to give opportunities, and I'm talking to specifically black executives in film and black people in film who have enough pull to do something, or who have enough wealth and money to kind of make, who have enough to shake the table. Their specific job is to continue to create opportunity and open doors for other black people to come into that lane. Just like if you're in the music industry and maybe you're the exec or something, or maybe you got a record label or something like that, your lane is to continue to open doors for engineers and producers and songwriters and entertainers and choreographers and tour directors and band directors and stuff like that to get their opportunity. Or, if you're in the sciences, if you're working for some kind of firm and you get that top tier position in the senior leadership, that, your board or your team, that you're bringing opportunity for the up and coming who are there. Or if you're working in the collegiate realm, you're working in the university systems or something like that, that you're giving those opportunities, those internships, those fellowships, you know what I mean? Like, if everybody just does their part to an extent, it will help the situation. But at the end of the day, we're living in a country where 6% of the national budget goes to education. And if you really talk about education in general, and you talk about what percentage of that goes to black schools, and I'm talking about public school system where black people live, of that 6%, I can guarantee you that less than 20% of that is really funding black schools. So everything is a structural standpoint, but we keep looking at it from an individualistic standpoint, and we keep looking for people to save us and help us. And unfortunately, the entire setup of how our country is arranged has a setup to fail. When you talk about redlining and gerrymandering and the school to prison pipeline, and the fact that all these people keep losing their right to vote for nonsense, and when you look at how hard it is to get yourself out of welfare, or if you're in any kind of program, how hard it is. Think about if you're somebody who's living in like affordable housing or something like that, where they have a limit to how much you can make in order to stay in that program. If you're somebody living in a place where the market rent is $2,000 and you have a decent job, you're doing the best you can, but that job only pays you $40,000, and you qualify to get in this program that's going to let you get subsidized housing. Cool, you get your $40,000 job and your rent is, instead of $2,000, it's like $1,200 or $1,300. All right, cool, awesome. The problem is now that you want to go and get a raise because you've been promoted and you did what you were supposed to do and you got a promotion, and now they're paying you, $43,000 instead of $40,000. And maybe the cutoff for that program was $42,000. So now all of a sudden, you make too much to stay in the place that you live in, and you either have to pay market price for the place that you're in or move out. And so now you have to get out of this place that you're living in and try to find another place to live, and now you're worse off than when you started. Because even though you're making more, now you have to pay market price because you phased out of the program that was supposed to help people, do what they need to do. And so even with a program like that, there needs to be a better system in helping people transition out of it and getting on their feet without everything being punitive. Oh, you make too much, gotta cut you off. This video is so long, but the guy with that petition, I'm not going to knock him. I think his energy is in the right place. It's just, when you have a good heart, you got to remember that sometimes you're operating in a world of snakes. And so you have to think the way that the snake does in order to kind of get somewhere. Anyway, that's my 2 cents. I'm out. Subscribe.